DreAllDay.com.
You are now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to occur. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves all of us, especially yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book. It's a whole lifestyle that we have put around this. We wrote several books on it, but one specific book, and now we have the manual on it. And you are listening to the Daily Masterclass. Yes, the show comes out every single day. I know there's not any other like it, but this all goes under one umbrella that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic, we're going to talk about what entrepreneurs actually do. Now, you might think you have a pretty good idea of what entrepreneurs do. Maybe you are an entrepreneur. Maybe you think you could explain what entrepreneurs actually do. But I'm going to explain it here today, what entrepreneurs actually do, what your real job is when you are an entrepreneur, regardless of what you are selling, how you are selling it, or to whom you are selling it. Now, before I go into more of the introduction here, let me tell you that I have a text message line where I want you to send me a text message and tell me the most valuable idea or insight or something you're going to think different or do different based on what you heard here today. My number is 305-384-6894. And once you send me a text there and confirm yourself, not only will you be able to engage with me, you'll also receive my daily motivation text message that I send out every single morning to everybody who's in my texting community. So that number again is 305-384-6894. Now, talking about what entrepreneurs actually do, understand that it's a lot more to this game of entrepreneurship than just selling your stuff and making your own schedule and being your own boss and whatever else you consider goes into entrepreneurship. This one, what we're going to talk about here today, is really about the mentality of entrepreneurship at its core, the core foundational mindset that goes behind being an entrepreneur, that is bigger than the strategic or the tactical things that you do on a day-to-day basis, or anything that goes into the definition of being an entrepreneur, such as being a person who starts an undertaking, taking on financial risk, being a person who's in charge, putting the money up, working directly with consumers. I'm going a level higher than that here today, or a level deeper, depending on how you want to look at it. So let's go right to it. Point number one. The topic, once again, is what entrepreneurs actually do. And actually, before I even get into those points, I do have several episodes here on this show where I have talked about entrepreneurship. So I want to make sure that I'm giving you those episodes so that you have some reference material that you can refer to here. In episode 1919, I told you about the 4 key attributes for being an entrepreneur in just a couple of weeks. So if you have not, you don't remember that episode, or you weren't listening when I did that episode, make sure you check episode 1919. In episode 1878, I explained that there's no such thing as an underpaid entrepreneur. That one was directed specifically at those who want to get into the creator field or the influencer field, understanding that if you consider that work to be entrepreneurship, then there is no minimum salary that comes with it. You have to go out there and eat what you kill, just like any other entrepreneur does. In episodes 1722 through 1727, I did a 6-part series where I answered a bunch of questions from an entrepreneurship class, a high school entrepreneurship class, from some guys that I had connected with. They had me talk to their class. The class wrote down all their questions. I couldn't answer them all when I was speaking to them directly, but I went and made episodes addressing all of those questions. Again, those episodes number 1722 through 1720. Let me make sure I got that right. 1722 through 1727. In episode number 1585, I explained to you why I, even as a former professional athlete, I look at entrepreneurs as mentors much more than I look at athletes. In episode 1456, I talked about the entrepreneurial hunter. Episode 1226, I explained why I became an entrepreneur, story behind my own entrepreneurship journey. And the last one I'll give you right now is episode 1248, a message for the struggling entrepreneur. So any of you who's in business and things are not going the way that you want them to go right now, I had a message that I gave you in that episode. And all those will be linked down below in the show notes. So now, all that said, let's get into point number one, what entrepreneurs actually do. Point number one is that what we do as entrepreneurs is we take on problems and take ownership of solving them. That is the essence of what an entrepreneur does. And I'll give a hat tip to Russell Brunson, who has the Marketing Secrets podcast, which I mentioned in my latest series of episodes where I talked about my favorite podcasts that I listened to. That was episodes number, I believe it was 1637 or 1737, but let me make sure I get you the right number there so I'm not sending you to the wrong ones. That was episode number 1637 and 1638. So if you want to know what I listen to, there will be some podcasts that I listen to. I think I listed maybe 8 or 10 in those 2 episodes. Go and check those 2 episodes there. And that was it was 1637, 1638, almost a year ago, damn near by the time you're hearing this one. So it's been a while. That list has changed slightly, but that is a good starting point for you just to get an idea of the kind of material that I'm taking in on a daily basis. So Russell Brunson was the one who I first heard talk about this idea. He talked about this years ago. And he's the guy who is a co-founder and one of the guys who runs a company called ClickFunnels, which is a funneling software platform. And if you know anything about sales funnels, you probably have heard of ClickFunnels. Maybe some of you actually use it. But Russell he's a marketing mastermind. This guy's a genius when it comes to marketing. He's a former athlete, just like myself. He was in wrestling. He wrestled up through college, and then he went into entrepreneurship and was doing a whole lot of things for many years before he came across the idea that finally became, or the one that worked, that finally became his software platform, ClickFunnels. And this is something that, again, I heard him talk about. So hat tip to him for seeding this idea, but I'm going to extend it out and talk about it my way. Now, an entrepreneur, what we do as entrepreneurs is we go out into the world, or we're already out in the world, and we see something that we believe we can handle better than anyone else has handled it so far. That is the essence of what we do as entrepreneurs. We see a problem out there and we say to ourselves, you know what? I can solve this problem that nobody else is solving. Or maybe somebody else is solving it, or at least they think they're solving it. I'm going to solve it better than these people over here have already solved the problem. That is the essence of what we do as entrepreneurs. We don't wait for someone else to fix the problem. We identify ourselves, we nominate ourselves as the person who is going to fix that problem, whatever it happens to be, and then we go to work trying to actually prove ourselves right, trying to prove that we can actually fix the problem. Usually, as entrepreneurs, just by nature, we often bite off more than we can chew. We say we're going to solve a problem because we see the way that problem could be solved that is better than any of the current solutions. And then we go out and we set out to actually create that solution. And what we usually find out once we get started and really find out what it's going to take is that it's going to take a lot more work, a lot more time, a lot more effort, money, attention, energy, and focus than what it seemed like it would take when we first started off. And the essence of what makes us entrepreneurs is that when we hit that point and we realize there's going to be a lot more work than we thought, but the non-entrepreneur will do is turn away and say, okay, well, yeah, it's a little bit too much work. I'm not going to get involved in this. Let me go do something else. Let me go find an easier issue to tackle or something that's not going to take so much of my resources. Us as entrepreneurs, the essence of the entrepreneurial spirit and the entrepreneurial mindset is when we realize that it's going to be more work than we thought, we say, okay, good. And then we dive in and we actually start doing that work because we realize in our bones that once we figure it out and we actually come across that solution and make it work, not only for ourselves, but make it work for other people, that there's going to be a payoff on the back end. At least that's the gamble that we're making. And it is indeed a gamble that we're making. We're betting on ourselves that with our ingenuity, we can solve a problem better than anyone else, and that we're going to get the ROI for solving that problem better than anybody else. And again, this is the essence of entrepreneurship. Now, if you're the type of person who's not into that kind of thing, you're not into the gamble, you're not into the fact that you're going to put a whole lot of your resources, again, from episode 609, time, money, attention, energy, focus, into solving a problem. You're going to put a lot of those resources in up front before you get any of the return on investment on the back end, if, and this is a big if you get any return on investment on the back end. If you're not into that, then entrepreneurship is not for you. This is the essence of what being an entrepreneur is about. The definition of an entrepreneur is a person who undertakes or starts some type of business operation while taking on greater than normal financial risk. And sometimes the financial risk is some entrepreneurs or people who would be entrepreneurs will say something like, well, listen, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't have any money. I don't have any cash to be an entrepreneur. Taking on a greater than normal financial risk does not necessarily mean that you have to have this big cash outlay at the beginning. What it means is sometimes you are putting in a whole lot of work, but you're not getting paid for doing the work. That's a financial risk as well, because as we say, time is money. Time is a lot more valuable than money, honestly. But the time that we spend doing work, if you're not getting paid for that work, you could be spending that same time doing some work that you would get paid for. So you are still taking on that financial risk, and the fact that it's the absence of the money you won't be making, as opposed to just putting up some money up front. So on either end, you are taking a financial risk. So that's the definition of being an entrepreneur, folks, is that you're going to solve this problem, but until you solve it, and until you prove that you have solved it, and until you let the world know that you have solved it and get the world to exchange their resources, usually in the form of money, for your resource, which is in the form of the problem that you solve, you don't get any money. You don't get paid at all. And again, this is why entrepreneurship is not for everybody, and this is why this is the first point here today. So you see that problem, you're going to handle it better than anybody else, and then you have to sell it to the world. You got to prove that you solved it. You know that you solved it. You got to prove to everybody else that you solved it. Then you have to sell that to the world. This is what an entrepreneur does. You don't wait for someone else to tell you to do it. You anoint yourself. You appoint yourself as the person who's going to go do it, and then you go get to work. Point number 2. Today's topic again is what entrepreneurs actually do, which is a lot more than selling stuff and making our own schedules. Number 2 is that we go against the grain in an attempt to prove ourselves right. This is what an entrepreneur does. I talked about this in episode 1698, why being disagreeable is the key to your success. Now, disagreeableness, as I've explained back in that episode 1698 and other times when I brought this up, disagreeable does not mean being confrontational or being a negative person in this context. This is the disagreeable versus agreeable scale in the Big 5 personality traits. If you're not familiar with the concept, you can Google it, the Big 5 personality traits. But agreeableness and disagreeableness is just a balance of just person's personality. So disagreeable doesn't mean bad, and agreeable does not necessarily mean good. Agreeable is a person who's more compromising, more of a team player, so to speak, person who wants to go along and get along with others, whereas disagreeable is a person who is more going against the grain, doing their own thing. They like to kind of work on their own more than they like to work as part of a group. So disagreeable people, many of them become entrepreneurs. By the very essence of the definition I just gave you is that we are soloists. We're the type of people who look at what everybody else is doing and what's already going on, and we decide that we can do it better, we're going to do it different, and we're going to do it our way. This is what an entrepreneur does, and this is why many entrepreneurs are high on the disagreeable scale when it comes to the Big 5 personality traits. And this is usually one of the traits of a person who is willing to and does indeed go against the grain in order to prove their point. Entrepreneurs are disagreeable in that we look at what already exists, and even though something out there may already be adequate, we decide that maybe we could do it better, as I talked about in point number 1, and we do things our own way, even if that means we are going to be stubborn about it, even if it means we're going to go against the best advice of other people who know us, love us, trust us, and care for us, even if it means that we have to invest a lot of our own resources that we have no idea, at least no guarantee up front, that we're going to get any return on investment on those investments of resources. We do it anyway. Again, this is just the core, the spirit of what an entrepreneur does. An entrepreneur is a person who proves that their way was right and makes it work. All right, that's what an entrepreneur, at least when an entrepreneur has reached success, that's usually what we've done. It's some form of that within what we see as success, is that we wanted to prove that we had a better idea, that we could build a better mousetrap, so to speak, that we could do things better than they were already being done. And we feel successful when we prove it. Now, sometimes proving it is in the form of maybe you just completed the project, whatever it is. Maybe it's in the form of how much money you made. Maybe it's in the form of the attention, or it's in the form of now you can move on to the next thing, or you have people that you are actually helping. Maybe it's the number of people that you serve. But in some way, for any entrepreneur to feel successful, we had to prove that doing things our way was the right way to do things, and then we make it work. Now, again, I gave you the same disclaimer here in point number 2 that I gave you in point number 1. This is not for everyone. This is not for everyone. Not everybody is wired in this way. Entities that already exist, by the way, listen, they need people to work their systems. Like, not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur in its essence, like I'm explaining here. We don't need everybody going their own way and doing their own thing. Then there'll be no cooperation. Right? Even entrepreneurs who go out and do their own thing need people to help them operate their systems and execute their plans. So entrepreneurs don't want to be the only one working in their company, whatever they happen to be running. They don't want to be the only one working there forever. So not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur, and not everyone is wired to be an entrepreneur. Now, I have episodes of this show where I talked about how in the future everyone is going to be an entrepreneur, but I meant it more in the technical definition of entrepreneur, being that you are going to be compensated based on your production, not in the spiritual, I guess we'll say, definition of entrepreneur, which is what I'm talking about here today. So I just want to make sure I'm clarifying that distinction. And understand another thing about why this is not for everybody. The inevitable failures that come with being an entrepreneur is also not for everyone. Not only does not all people are higher on the disagreeable than agreeable scale. If you're more on the agreeable scale, you're more of a team player, compromiser, want to be part of a group, go along with the group, get along with the group. Entrepreneurship is probably not your thing. You're probably not even thinking about entrepreneurship because it wouldn't be in your natural inclination. That's one part of why you might not want to be an entrepreneur. Another one is that maybe you're not the type of person who thinks about, well, I'm going to go against the grain and do things differently from everybody else and prove myself right. That is the second reason why entrepreneurship may not be for you. And another one is when you are an entrepreneur and you have this outlay of your resources, again, not just money, but time, money, attention, energy, and focus, knowing that there's no guarantee you're going to get a return on that investment, and knowing that it's probably guaranteed that there will be times that you do not get a return on that investment, at least not a tangible return on that investment. You'll get a lesson, you'll get an education, but you're not going to get a tangible return on the investment. Knowing this, not everybody even wants to sign up for that class. Not everybody wants to sign up for you're basically betting on yourself, and sometimes you're going to lose. Any of you been to a casino? Right? What happens to most of the people who bet? Most bets don't win. This is why casinos make so much money, because most of the bets don't win. It is not a 50-50 deal. They don't win half the time and lose half the time. It's not true. The bets in casinos are weighed heavily in the favor of the house. The house always wins. Our casinos do not lose money. Casinos always make money because everything is stacked in their favor. You do the math on any of those games, everything is stacked in the favor of the casino, even if just by a little bit. So the point is, most of the time when you gamble and you bet on yourself as an entrepreneur, you're going to lose. You're going to face many losses as an entrepreneur, and not everyone has the stomach to deal with those losses. So going against the grain, especially if it looks like it doesn't look like you're winning yet, it will invite other people who know you, like you, and care for you to offer you some advice, quote unquote advice, that maybe you shouldn't be doing it. My question is, and it's not even a question for you to answer to me, but a question for you to ask and answer to yourself, are you ready to deal with that? Are you ready to withstand the fact that there are people who are looking out for your best interests, or at least they think they are, who are going to advise you that maybe you shouldn't go against the grain, maybe you shouldn't be an entrepreneur, maybe you shouldn't keep trying this endeavor that is not quite working yet because they don't see it paying off for you? Do you have the internal fortitude to keep going, even though everything that they're saying is a reflection of your current reality, that they're right, nothing is working right now, and maybe you should walk away? Would you still keep going despite the fact that somebody told you that? If the answer is no, then you're probably not built for entrepreneurship. It's probably not the thing for you. And that's not necessarily a negative thing. Like I said, every organization needs people to help that organization run. But if your answer is yes, you keep going anyway, or maybe it even excites you even more and makes you want to go even harder, then you probably are built to be an entrepreneur. As a matter of fact, you probably already are one right now. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is what entrepreneurs really do. Number 3, we as entrepreneurs become the change that we want to see. In other words, when we see that there's something out there that could be done better, as I talked about point number 1 and number 2, we see something that could be done better, we go do it. We don't say somebody should do that better. We don't complain about it and say this is not very well put together. We don't just idly ruminate on it and just think about it and never do anything. We actually, again, appoint ourselves to be the one who is actually going to create that better. That change that we want to see, we go and make it happen. I don't like the way people are talking about discipline and confidence and mental toughness. I'm not going to complain about the people who are already doing it. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to do it better than them. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to get my message out to the world and prove that my way of looking at things is better than other people's way of looking at things. And look at these people that I'm impacting here's the results that prove that I know what I'm talking about. Entrepreneurs are thermostats, not thermometers. Now, what does that mean? Now, if you know what a thermostat and thermometer is, if you really think about it, you might understand the metaphor without my explanation, but I'll explain it anyway. In my book, Work on Your Game, I talked about the concept of being a thermostat versus being a thermometer. Now, everyone knows what a thermometer does. If you don't, it is simply a device that is used to measure temperature. There's thermometers for humans. If you have a sick child, the child says they have a headache or they seem to be sick, you put the thermometer in their mouth, or you can put it on their, I don't know where else you put it. You put it under their armpit. I've seen thermometers you put it under somebody's armpit, or maybe they hold it in their hand. And the thermometer simply just tells you the temperature. What is the temperature that this person has right now? There are food thermometers. You put a thermometer in your chicken when it's basting in the oven, and then the thermometer tells you when the inside of the chicken is cooked, because we can't tell if the inside is cooked because we're just looking at the outside. The thermometer basically gives you a reading of what is going on. That's what a thermometer does. Whereas a thermostat, on the other hand, any of you who, if you live somewhere, there's a thermostat somewhere in there. Maybe you have control of it, maybe you don't. But the thermostat is where you can actually control the temperature of what's going on. So the thermostat takes it a step further than a thermometer. The thermometer tells you what's happening. The thermostat controls what's happening. So if you have control over the thermostat in your home, you can turn the temperature up to 80 degrees if it's too cold outside. You can make it a little bit warmer, at least Fahrenheit. And if it's a little bit too warm in the house, you can turn the temperature down and make it a little bit cooler, make the air conditioning come on. The thermostat controls the environment. It controls the temperature. It alters the ground. It alters the landscape of what's going on. That's what a thermostat does. Whereas a thermometer only takes a snapshot of the landscape and just tells you what's happening, but it doesn't do anything other than just tell. It just reports the news, but it does not become the news. Entrepreneurs, we become the news. We are the thermostats. We change things. We look at the situation, and if we decide the situation is not to our liking, we make adjustments, not only to ourselves, but then we make the adjustments that will lead to an adjustment of the situation. That's what an entrepreneur does. We become the change. We don't just talk about or pine for or ask for change. We actually go and become that change. We do not just note the situation, we adjust it. When we as entrepreneurs think something could be done better, again, we don't complain, we don't protest, we don't just think about it or dream about it. We actually get to work and show the world, hey, there is a way to do this better. Let me show you how it can be done better. And here, I'm the one who did it. That is a job that you take on when you sign up to be an entrepreneur. So for those of you who are listening, who are budding entrepreneurs, or you're just starting as an entrepreneur, you're already an entrepreneur, I want you to ask yourself questions about every point that I made here today, and where do you fit in with these things that I'm talking about? Let me recap the class so I can refresh your memory on these points. The topic again is what entrepreneurs actually do. Number one, we take on problems and take ownership of solving them. As an entrepreneur, my question to you is, what problem are you solving? What problem have you taken ownership of solving? For whom are you solving it, and how are you solving it? Entrepreneurs do not wait for someone else to fix a problem. We assign ourselves as the one who's going to fix it. Number two, we go against the grain and prove ourselves correct. Entrepreneurs are disagreeable on the Big 5 personality trait scale. We're on the disagreeable side, and that we look at what already exists and choose to do things our own way. And it doesn't mean that if you don't do this, anything's wrong. All right? Disagreeable and agreeable are not necessarily bad and good. It's just a personality trait. Where are you on that scale? And every one of us is somewhere on that scale, usually leaning to one side or another. Going against the grain will invite others to advise you that maybe you shouldn't be doing it. And the question I'll ask you is, when people advise you to stop doing what you're doing and just give it up, does that excite you to keep going, or do you kind of consider it and think maybe that they're right? That could tell you a lot about whether you really have the wiring to be an entrepreneur or not, because it will inevitably fail as an entrepreneur. And when you fail, everybody's going to want to give you advice to not try again. Point number three, entrepreneurs become the change that we want to see. We are thermostats. We are not thermometers. We do not just note the situation. We adjust the situation. We get to work and show the world how whatever it is we're looking at can be done better. And guess what? We are the ones who is actually going to do it. This is the job that you take on a spiritual level when you decide to become an entrepreneur. Send me a text and tell me the best insight you got from today's class, or what are you going to do different? How are you going to think different based on what you heard today? Or what are you going to ask yourself based on what you heard today. My number is 305-384-6894. Work on your game. Dre all day.